Ladies and gentlemen, what is it to be a woman without friends? Society whispers a silent judgment, suggesting loneliness is a curse, a void to be filled, a mistake to be corrected. But what if, in the absence of others, we discover something much more profound? The idea of friendship as we know it often carries with it an expectation of connection, of shared identity, of mutual validation. Yet does that really define friendship? Or is it merely a reflection of our desire for external affirmation? The woman with no friends is not necessarily a victim of isolation. She is a wanderer in the world of her own thoughts. The world tells her that something is missing. But perhaps it is not she who is missing something. Perhaps it is the world that has misunderstood the value of solitude. For it is in these quiet moments, these moments where no one else is present, that we come face to face with the deepest aspects of our being. We are forced to ask the question, who are we, when no one is there to define us? Solitude is not the absence of others, it is the presence of self. We often think of solitude as a void, a desolate state that needs to be filled, as if our time alone is a punishment or an error of fate. But in truth, solitude is an invitation, a profound opportunity to meet ourselves in a way we rarely allow. It is in these quiet moments, far from the noise and distraction of the world, that we come face to face with the truest essence of who we are. We are so often defined by our interactions with others, by the roles we play, the expectations placed upon us, and the labels we adopt. But what happens when those external markers fade away? When there are no others around to confirm our identity, no social settings in which to perform our roles, we are left alone with our own thoughts. It is here that we are called to look inward, to encounter the parts of ourselves we may have forgotten or never fully understood. The nature of solitude is paradoxical. On one hand, it can feel uncomfortable, even unsettling, because we are so accustomed to constant external stimulation. The hum of a conversation, the clink of cups at a coffee shop, the sound of traffic passing by, it all becomes a steady rhythm to which we sink our lives. When this rhythm stops, when the distractions vanish, we are confronted with silence. At first, this silence may seem empty, as though something is missing, but if we allow ourselves to sit with it, we begin to realize that what was missing was not something external, but something within. Solitude is not simply being alone. It is an invitation to rediscover the inner landscape of our being. It is an opportunity to reflect on our thoughts, to feel the depth of our emotions without the judgment or influence of others. In this stillness, we may experience a kind of clarity that is not available in the noise of the world. We hear the subtle whispers of our own desires, our dreams, and our fears. And with this, we gain a deeper understanding of our own nature. In solitude, we also come to understand that we are never truly alone. The world, in its vastness, is full of connections that transcend physical presence. Solitude does not isolate us, it connects us to the greater fabric of life. We realize that we are part of a much larger whole, a universe that pulses with energy and life, whether or not others are present to witness it. In this space, we are reminded that our existence is not defined by the roles we play for others, but by the quiet, unspoken connection we have with all that is. It is in solitude that we learn the art of being. We cease striving for external validation and begin to accept ourselves for who we truly are, not who we think we should be. In the absence of others, we are free to simply be, to exist in our own skin without pretense. This is not a lonely existence, it is a full one. The peace that arises from solitude is not the peace of escape, but the peace of acceptance. It is a quiet knowing that in the end we are enough not because of what we do or who we know, but because of who we are, in the stillness of our own being. So solitude is not something to fear, but something to embrace. It is a space where we can listen to the deeper rhythms of life, where we can hear the whispers of our soul, and where we can reconnect with the essence of who we are. Far from being a curse, it is a gift, a precious opportunity to experience life with clarity, depth, and meaning. In a world that constantly encourages connection, it is easy to assume that human relationships define us. We are taught to measure our worth by the number of friends we have, the groups we belong to, and the social circles we navigate. From the time we are children, we are encouraged to make friends, to fit in, to belong. We live in a culture where connection is not only valued but often seen as a necessity for a meaningful life. Yet what if this idea of connection is in itself an illusion? What if true connection does not lie in the number of people we know, or in the frequency of our interactions, but in something far deeper and more subtle? The relationships we form with others are often more about fulfilling our need for validation than about establishing genuine, meaningful bonds. We wear masks and play roles, presenting ourselves in ways we believe others will accept, and in turn, others do the same. In this dance of social exchange, we may think we are forming connections, but what we are really doing is performing. We act in ways that we think will gain us approval, all the while neglecting the deeper question of whether the person we are presenting is truly who we are. The truth is, most of the time we are not connecting with others at all. We are simply connecting with the image of ourselves that we project onto them. In this way, our sense of connection becomes a reflection of our own insecurities. We seek others not necessarily for their company, but for the comfort that comes with knowing we are seen and heard. But is being seen for a mask really the same as being truly seen? Is being heard for words we have learned to say rather than words that truly express our inner selves the same as being heard? These are the questions we rarely ask, because we have been conditioned to believe that if we have friends, if we have people around us, we are living authentically. Yet we are left with a hollow feeling, a sense that something is missing, even in the midst of others. The illusion of connection is also reinforced by the rapid pace of modern life. We live in a world of endless interactions, social media, text messages, emails, phone calls, but how much of this is true connection? How much of it is simply the act of filling time, maintaining a facade of engagement? We may have hundreds of friends on social media, but how many of those relationships go beyond surface-level pleasantries? How many of them involve vulnerability, authenticity, and deep understanding? In many ways, these connections are just distractions, ways to avoid confronting the emptiness we feel when we stop to examine the quality of our true relationships. True connection, then, is not about the quantity of our interactions, but the depth of them. It is about being willing to show up as our real selves, to be vulnerable, and to engage with others in a way that transcends the performative. It is about asking not how many people know me, but how many people truly see me, and more importantly, it is about asking the same of ourselves. Do we truly see ourselves, or are we merely presenting the version of ourselves that we think others will accept? Connection, in its truest sense, requires an openness to the unknown, an acceptance of both our strengths and weaknesses, and a willingness to be fully present with another person without the need for validation or approval. It is not something that can be manufactured or forced. It emerges in moments of authenticity, in shared silence, in the quiet understanding between two people who do not need to speak to know each other's heart. In a society that often values conformity and collective identity, the role of the individual is a complex and at times misunderstood concept. We are born into a world with pre-established norms, rules, and expectations. From a young age, we are taught to fit in, to align ourselves with the values and ideals of the culture that surrounds us. In many ways, this is essential for the functioning of a society. It is how we create structure, cooperation, and a sense of belonging. But within this framework, the individual must find their place. The question then arises, what is the role of the individual in a world that constantly calls for conformity? To be an individual is to stand apart, not necessarily in opposition, but in a way that honors one's own unique expression. The individual must walk the fine line between the desire to belong and the need to remain true to themselves. Society provides a context within which we live, work, and interact. But it is up to the individual to determine how they will engage with this context, how they will respond to the expectations placed upon them. and how they will carve out their own path within the greater whole. The role of the individual in society is not simply to conform to the norms, but to challenge and redefine them. In each society, there are those who push boundaries, question authority, and offer new perspectives. These individuals are often seen as outliers, rebels, or even threats to the established order. Yet without them, society would stagnate. It is through the individual's refusal to conform, their willingness to be different, that progress occurs. It is the individual who, when faced with the limits of tradition, sees the possibility of something new, something better, something that has not yet been imagined. However, this role of the individual comes with its own set of challenges. The individual who steps outside of societal norms often faces resistance, criticism, and alienation. To be truly individual is to stand apart, sometimes alone, in a world that encourages uniformity. But it is in this very separation that the individual can offer something of great value perspective. The individual who does not simply follow the crowd has the space to observe, to reflect, and to create. They have the ability to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. The role of the individual, therefore, is not simply to serve the collective, but to be a vital force of transformation within it. The individual's unique perspective is what allows for change, for the expansion of thought, for the evolution of culture. In this sense, the individual and society are not opposing forces, but interconnected. Society needs the individual's contributions, just as the individual needs the context that society provides. The individual may challenge the status quo, but it is this very act of challenging that propels society forward. The tension between individuality and collective identity is not one of conflict, but of creation, each pushing and pulling against the other, each shaping the other in an ongoing dance of growth. The individual's role in society, then, is to remain true to themselves, to cultivate their own unique voice, and to contribute their individuality to the collective consciousness. By doing so, they become an essential part of the whole, not because they conform, but because they have the courage to be different, to question, and to inspire change. In a world that often asks for uniformity, the individual who dares to remain authentic becomes the catalyst for the new, the unknown, and the transformative. The role of the individual ultimately is to shape society not by fitting into it, but by standing apart and offering a new way of being. To be alone is often seen as a condition of isolation, a state to be avoided, and yet within this solitude lies a profound paradox. At first glance, the experience of being alone seems like an absence, a lack of connection, a void in which nothing exists but silence. We are conditioned to believe that to be alone is to be incomplete, that our worth is defined by the relationships we have and the company we keep. But in truth, there is an underlying richness to being alone that we often fail to recognize. Being alone is not an absence, but a presence and invitation to explore the depths of our own being. When we are alone, we are forced to confront ourselves. Without the distraction of others, there is nothing to shield us from the thoughts and feelings that reside within. We are faced with our own fears, desires, dreams, and contradictions. The world around us may seem still, but within, a vast world unfolds. This is where the paradox lies. While being alone can feel like emptiness, it is in this solitude that we often discover a profound sense of connection. Alone, we are free from the judgments and expectations of others, and in that freedom we are able to explore who we truly are, unencumbered by the roles we play for others. Yet this freedom also brings discomfort. We might feel vulnerable in our solitude, unsure of what to do with all of this space, this silence. The mind, unoccupied, may race with thoughts that we have long suppressed or ignored. We might find ourselves longing for the noise, for the company of others, simply because it is easier to distract ourselves than to face what lies within. But the more we resist the discomfort of being alone, the more we reinforce the illusion that we are incomplete without others. The paradox deepens we seek connection to avoid the discomfort of solitude, yet it is only by embracing solitude that we can truly experience connection, not just with others, but with ourselves. In being alone, we realize that our sense of isolation is often a reflection of our own perception. We might feel disconnected from the world, yet in truth we are intimately connected to it. The stillness of solitude allows us to feel the pulse of life in a way that the noise of daily interactions does not. Alone, we can hear the subtle rhythms of nature, the whispers of our intuition, the gentle call to become more of who we are meant to be. The paradox is that in the absence of others, we are more connected to the world than ever before. Solitude also reveals the interdependence of all things. While we may feel alone in a physical sense, we are always surrounded by the unseen threads that connect us to the world, our thoughts, our actions, our impact on those we encounter. Being alone is not about disconnection, it is about becoming aware of the deeper connection that exists beyond the visible. We come to understand that to be alone is not to be abandoned, it is to be part of something greater, something that transcends time and space. Ultimately, the paradox of being alone is this: we find both the freedom and the discomfort of solitude. And yet in this very paradox, we also find the opportunity to become whole. To be alone is not to be isolated, but to be deeply connected to ourselves, to the world, and to the mysteries of life. It is in our aloneness that we discover the richness of existence, a richness that we often overlook in our search for external validation. In embracing solitude, we learn that we are never truly alone, for we are always surrounded by the vast, interconnected web of life that exists both within us and around us. In the end exploration of solitude, connection, individuality, and the paradox of being alone reveals a profound truth: our lives are not defined by the number of people we surround ourselves with, nor by the roles we play in society, but by the depth of our relationship with ourselves. To be alone is not to be lost or incomplete, but to be immersed in the vastness of our own existence. It is in solitude that we truly discover who we are, free from the distractions and expectations of others. Similarly, the connections we seek in the world are not defined by the quantity of relationships, but by their authenticity, their depth, and their ability to help us connect not just with others, but with our deepest selves. The individual's role is not to conform, but to contribute to the collective in ways that are true to their own nature, offering perspectives and insights that only they can provide. In the end, the greatest connection we can make is with ourselves, for it is only through this internal understanding that we can truly connect with the world around us. The paradox of being alone teaches us that in our solitude we are never truly separate, we are deeply intertwined with the rhythm of life itself, connected to the world and to all that it holds.